Hi everyone, welcome to Forbes Talks. I am here with Michael del Castillo, who I think of as our crypto king. That's a bad term these days. No, I'm not going to say it that way. You cover crypto and blockchain, and especially how it's being used, across the enterprise, etc. So let's start with this landscape right now, because it's confusing.
It is. It's confusing. It's confusing and it's scary. And I think that downplaying the fear and apprehension that is out there just is counterproductive. It's legitimate. People are concerned. They have reason to be concerned. But it's not the first time that crypto has faced a catastrophic event. I always love to point people to the death of Bitcoin tracker, which is approaching 500 deaths of Bitcoin.
Really? And yet lives to tell another
It lives to tell another tale.
Yeah, right?
It's amazing how people sometimes don't get tired of hearing their own voice say that Bitcoin is dead. It's frequently the same people saying it over and over and over again for years and years and years and years.
Well, Mt. Gox, I think of as one that was like a famous implosion.
I think Mt. Gox is the implosion that people are accurately comparing this moment to. Interestingly, I think Mt. Gox was actually worse until very recently. So the reason why I say that is at the time that Mt. Gox exploded.
Which was when? What do you remember what year it was?
2013,
okay.
2014.
Right.
It was the exchange for the entire planet. There was a lot of P2P transactions back then, individual to individual.
Peer-to-peer, yeah.
But the exchanges themselves were almost non-existent. Mt. Gox had, depending on how you count it, between 70 and 90% of the global volume was going through that one exchange. So when it exploded, it was a massive percentage of the entire industry that went down with it.
Yeah.
And the industry emerged. In fact, Coinbase was a direct result of that. Kraken was a direct result of that. These centralized exchanges that had institutional checklists to make sure that they were taking care of their customers. That layer of maturity emerged from the Mt. Gox collapse. And we've seen time and again, collapse after collapse after collapse, that the open source nature of crypto means that the developers in the space identify the problems that the nearly catastrophic collapse came from, and they write solutions for them.
Well, it's interesting though, because unlike, let's say, a financial collapse, you get the regulators come in, and then there's new laws. There's Sarbanes-Oxley, or there's Dodd-Frank. Because this is a space where the regulators are just kind of coming to terms with it, what does a fix look like? Like, what really changed? Was it more transparency and more controls after Mt. Gox?
So I think the changes after Mt. Gox were, they were institutional grade, people with suits and ties. Sorry, crypto geeks, but
not you and not me.
People with MBAs and suits and ties, who knew traditional accounting practices, who had worked at publicly traded mainstream financial companies that got involved and built solutions that were designed to fix the Mt. Gox problems. And they largely did so. And Coinbase is a multi-billion-dollar company as a result of the problems that they fixed.
And let's jump ahead to the gift that keeps on giving, which is, of course, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, dominating the news. Maybe we should start with, what are the ripple effects we're seeing right now, and any sort of discussion as to what needs to change next?
Well, that's a great question. The ripple effects are pervasive, all-consuming, and difficult to get your arms around. So it's almost like to pick one or two significant problems that are the problem might be a bit difficult, but I do think that we have enough information to start to intuit a bit. And that is, I hate to say it, but a reaction against centralized exchanges, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
The lessons that the cryptocurrency community is learning from this are that if the cryptocurrency is on a centralized exchange, it is not their cryptocurrency. It is that exchange's cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a problem with the exchange and they can't get their money out, it's kind of they're accepting a degree of responsibility here. And the responsibility that they're accepting is by taking their cryptocurrency off of centralized exchanges.
What's the alternative? That sounds like chaos. Not to have, I mean, not to have some sort of centralized, transparent way to even gauge.
So interestingly, it is counterintuitive, but the alternative, which is called a decentralized exchange, is actually more transparent. And we've seen some evidence of resilience of these decentralized exchanges that is actually greater than
Such
the resilience.
as what? What's a decentral? Give us an example.
So one of the biggest places to go that's like a truly open source financial infrastructure that individuals can use without having to ask for permission is Uniswap. And I like to think of Uniswap as a common base layer of a centralized exchange, but that has then been turned over to the public. And
who owns that? Or I won't say where it's based. It's almost like nowhere.
Yeah.
Homeless,
Well,
yeah.
it's legitimately open source software. It was developed by the Uniswap team as a code base that was published on GitHub, a open source code repository that anybody can download and use. So it is truly the code itself is truly not owned by anybody, but the group of people that created that code base now have a company that is building on that code base, just like any other company could.
And they've benefited from this situation where people are migrating, or is it more like down the road?
I think that it's very clear that money is leaving the centralized exchanges. We're seeing outflows of $1 billion plus on a day of people that had their cryptocurrency on these centralized exchanges that are seeing what happened with FTX. And even if they really love the exchange that they've been using, it's causing them to reevaluate their relationship with their cryptocurrency. You've got to keep in mind the original promise here was that you could be your own bank.
Yeah.
And these centralized exchanges essentially became crypto banks in a lot of ways. And the outflow off of these centralized exchanges is a sort of hat tip to that old the original view of crypto of being your own bank. It's hard to say who the single winners are going to be. There are actually a lot of decentralized exchanges. I just mentioned Uniswap as an example, but there are many decentralized exchanges. And while there's no single winner today, I think we are seeing, like, as a class, that the money moving off of these centralized exchanges, a lot of it is ending up on decentralized exchanges.
So